Hey everyone, welcome to my channel, it's me Gamerturk, and this is weekly SAO Online Alicization WoU of Underworld Q&A, the show that has never missed a week so far. But we're back with a single episode delay because last week I was way too busy traveling back to Turkey. So this week, with episode 14, we are continuing our weekly WoU of Underworld Q&A. As usual, we got normal questions where the spoiler line is basically what you have watched so far. So if you have watched episode 14 of WoU of Underworld, you are safe to watch this, there won't be any spoilers. Then we have the opinion section. Again, that bit will be spoiler free as well. Up until episode 14 content we will cover, everything past it will not be covered. So if you don't want spoilers, you can still watch that opinion section. And after that, we will have the spoiler section. That's the bit where if you don't want spoilers, basically don't watch that bit because that's gonna dive into future content. Now, if you like these kinds of stuff, I ask you all to send me your questions during weekly episode explained videos. So ask your question there and I will answer over here. Also, make sure to hit that subscribe button and bell icon so you never miss any of these videos. And we got Medina, Eugeo and Kirito merch down in the description commemorating the release of SAO Online Alicization Licorice. Do check it out. But without further ado, we're starting with our normal non-spoiler section. First one by Shadow Hunter. Question: when Bercouli slashed the past, can he hit himself if he is not careful enough? The answer is a very simple yes. We're starting with a very simple question here. But yes, if he is not careful, he is gonna hit himself, and the anime is portraying that to be easier to understand for you as an anime audience. In reality, Bercouli is not even seeing those echoes of the past, he has to really know where he is slashing by memory so he doesn't accidentally slash himself. So yes, that is very much a possibility. He can accidentally cut himself if he's not careful. Next question by Justin. Why did Bercouli have to die? What was the reason he died? Is it because of the memory release Uragiri or something else? Well, he died because his HP essentially depleted to a zero. He was not killed by using his memory release. What his memory release did was to expend the final life remaining on his sword, so the sword shattered, but Bercouli himself died because he actually died. His life hits zero and that's when you die. Next question by Yusuf Ali. Can Fluctlights communicate and impact the underworld after their bodies die? That's a bit of a tricky question. It's yes and no, because the death of their body is not exactly the exact same time their Fluctlight activity dies. Their light cube is formatted to be used for somebody else. Until their light cube is formatted, they can impact Underworld through their incarnation. After their light cube is deleted, no, they can no longer impact the Underworld. However, some things are key here because you have heard Shinon say this before, the you that lives in me, when she was speaking to Kirito. Basically, because Underworld runs on these memory data, there is a possibility that someone who has died but still exists in the memory of someone else can impact the world through that memory. The same case is with the Blue Rose sword right now, where a fragment of Eugeo, because he has fused with the sword, he is part of the memory of the sword. I don't like using memory of the sword in my videos because the anime did not explain that bit. It's only in the novels and not everybody watched my explained episodes over a year ago. But yeah, he is essentially part of the memory of the sword. So just like Giga Cedar still lives in the Night Sky sword, or the Blue Rose itself lives in the Blue Rose sword, an echo of Eugeo lives in the Blue Rose sword as well. And that's how he can still impact. Not because he hasn't died, he has died and his light cube is completely erased, but a fragment of him still exists in the world. So if that is the case, I don't want to say Horcrux, but the concept is similar. He is dead. Unlike Voldemort, Eugeo is dead. But the fragment of him that remains in the world can still do something. You will see other examples of this as well, especially when it comes to the memory aspect of things. Next question by Ur. I still don't get it. Why was Quinella there and why was she looking like a goddamn good character? That is actually a very good question. I have received this question plenty of times. The key point is our perspective of Quinella as the anime audience or the light novel audience is mainly the fact that Quinella is our antagonist of the first half of Alicization, you know? We see her from her worst sides because she has to clash with Eugeo and Kirito. Well, Eugeo and Kirito have to clash with her because of their clashing ideals. But the way Bercouli sees her is not that. Bercouli is pretty much there to protect the humans in the human empire, and that's what Quinella has allowed him to do in a way where he can keep doing it for much longer than he ever could have imagined. So the way Bercouli sees Quinella is much different than how we see her through the eyes of Eugeo and Kirito. Yes, Quinella had plenty of evil deeds, but she has protected the human empire for over 200 years at that point too. It's not exactly black and white. And Quinella, looking at it objectively, Quinella is no different from someone like Kikoka Seijiro in the real world. Just seeing the Underworld as data, so not real, quote unquote. So from that perspective, she is not even evil, you know? Her thought process is no different than Kikoka Seijiro. The data, the things that are not real, are just tools to achieve certain means, and she wants to become real. So when you're trying to think about Quinella, you need to think about the way she approaches the world. It's not at all different from some other people that we deem to be good, you know? Kikoka Seijiro, you wouldn't call Kikoka an evil person. He just has a different perspective and approach to these new concepts starting to exist in the world. I know that's a bit vague, it's on the conceptual side of things, but I hope that answer satisfies your question. Next one. Since Iskahn only ripped his eye out and didn't actually break the seal of the right eye, would he ever be able to break it now? Like, if Emperor ordered him to do something and he wants to refuse, etc, etc. I am gonna answer this in a non-spoiler way, that's why it's in a non-spoiler section. Iskahn is very much still bound by their soul taboo in the Dark Territory, so the one with the most power has to be obeyed. He ripped his eye out. Let's start from the beginning, not even from ripping his eye out. The taboos, breaking the taboos is more of a mental block in the head. The seal of the right eye is basically a physical symptom of trying to break this, you know, it gives you pain, trying to dilute your mind so you no longer think about it. That's basically what the seal of the right eye is. Seal of the right eye is not the actual block preventing you from doing something. It's a symptom of the actual block. So Iskahn, going over there, ripping his right eye out, he has just treated the symptom. He doesn't want that pain in his mind trying to prevent him from thinking whatever he wants to think, so he rips his eye out, just deals with the pain of the wound rather than the pain of the seal, and that's what he did. But he is still bound by the mental barrier. So yes, if he was to get an order from his higher ups, he would still need to break the mental block that he has in his mind. And that's why he never regenerates his right eye as well, because it's just gonna bring the seal back. And that's why, if you look back a couple episodes, that's why he doesn't follow with the decoy army further to the south, because if he faces the Emperor, he knows once he's given an order, he cannot refuse that order. He just does not have that potential. But no, the seal does not move to different places like the left eye or something. It's specifically the seal of the right eye, and if his eyes was to be regenerated, he would still receive that eye once he tries to defy an order. Next question. I watched the episode thrice but couldn't find Bercouli's sword anywhere. It wasn't in the scabbard nor in his hand. Even the far shot of the scene didn't have it. Did they just forget it? That would be pretty lol. Great question, because that's not a lol at all. You see, I have mentioned this as a reply to one of the previous questions. Using perfect weapon control or memory release does deplete the life of your sword. This was mentioned all the way back in the Human Realm arc, where Eugeo and Kirito were trying to spare their usage of the attacks. And that was because the more you use it, the more your sword gets depleted of life, and eventually if you use it too much, if you don't have that sword sheathed for it to recover through sacred energy, well, it's gonna break. And that's exactly what happened with Bercouli. If you remember back at, what was it, episode 5 or 6, when he used the slash against the minions flying up above, that's why I had stressed back in that explained episode that scene was very important. He has been holding the perfect weapon control for hours at that point, and such a big perfect weapon control as well. That was exhausting both for Bercouli and for his sword. And during that time, there wasn't enough time to recover the sword. Bercouli has been through multiple wars at that point. Well, not wars, battles. The entire thing is a war. The joys of doing this unscripted. So yeah, at the end of it, once he reaches that final point, he knows this will be the final memory release that he's ever going to use, and after that the sword is gonna go bye-bye, and that's exactly what happens. He uses that final energy to use that last memory release on Vecta, and then the sword goes away because its life is depleted as well. Hope that answers the question. That should answer the question. That is exactly the answer. I don't like doing these unscripted. Next question, and we are moving into the opinion section. Still no spoilers, so you're free to watch even if you don't want spoilers. Question by Manish: if Asuna and Alice were to fight each other 1v1 with the same equipment, who would come out on top? I am starting with this one, the opinion section, but I don't like these types of questions, you know? Who would win 1v1? That is such a vague question, because you know, you need to take the humanity, the human side of these characters into account. They have different set of skills, different set of abilities, different habits, etc, 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 and that affects their 1v1 duel. You can't just say, put them up against each other 1v1. Well, how are we gonna put them against each other 1v1? Is it a narrow space? If it's a narrow space, Asuna will probably have a huge advantage because she's much more agile than Alice is. Is it an open space? Because if it's an open space, well, Alice's perfect weapon control is perfect for that. You know, those kinds of things. You need to really, when you're asking these kinds of questions, you really need to specify the environment along with your question. Environment and the atmosphere all around. How are you pitting these two against each other, etc. All those kinds of stuff. Without that, it's literally impossible to answer this question. I can say Asuna wins, and then there's gonna be 50 people with legitimate complaints that, oh, but Alice would win if this and that happened, or Asuna would destroy her if this and that happened, and all sides would have legitimate stuff to say about it, because the question itself is not specific at all. It can go either way depending on how you decide to format it in your own mind to answer the question. So yeah, that's why I don't like answering these kinds of questions. Next one by Kirigahime. What was your first thoughts on Bercouli's Release Recollection? Like back when it was teased by the Prime Senator Chudelkin, I honestly thought since it was a sword that meddles with time, his Release Recollection would cancel out the damages he sustained for the moment he struck it. Like, since the person died at time set, then it should technically cancel out any further actions. That's something I thought about myself as well, like, because you're killing someone from 10 minutes ago, technically what they have done should not have been done. That's a legitimate thing to think about, you know, that it does make sense, because if they disappeared back then, well, the 10 minutes, that means they haven't done anything at all in that 10 minutes. But the way it works, you just slash based on someone's location data. You don't exactly kill someone 10 minutes ago, you kill someone through where they were 10 minutes ago. So you don't invalidate the 10 minutes that you slashed them beforehand. So I hope that answers that question. Next one by Ripple. My question is, how relevant do you think Eiji will be? Do you think they'll add him some cool scenes? Maybe he'll just appear to say a few words and disappear, or maybe he'll just stay like a voiceless cameo. I love these Eiji related questions because none of us know, even those who have read the light novels, because Eiji and Ordinal Scale was created after Alicization was written, none of us have an idea as to what's gonna happen, so speculating is kind of fun. But I don't think it's gonna be a voiceless cameo. I'm pretty sure he's gonna properly appear. They are teasing him quite hard. Is he gonna say a few words and then disappear? He will have to disappear, but I cannot say why because spoilers. Probably not the best idea to answer this in the opinion section, but we're going with that. Do you think they'll add him some cool scenes? Absolutely, I do expect some cool scenes with Eiji, even interacting with Asuna, maybe a callback to the switch scene back during the Kagachi the Samurai Lord fight in Ordinal Scale, the very first fight. So something like a cool slow-mo switch moment between the two can be really nice to do a callback on. How relevant do I think Eiji will be? In the grand scheme of things, it's a war. So I do not expect one person to make a major difference in the grand scheme of things. I do believe he's gonna have some really cool scenes. I don't think he's gonna affect the war in any way, shape or form. The story is still set. He needs to be interjected into the story and then taken out without changing the course of the story itself. So even from a narrative perspective, I do not think he'll be very relevant, but we'll get some cool scenes hopefully. Next up, good question by Andrew Galatia. Nice explained video, it is perfectly and about my question. This is an opinion question. What would happen to little Eugeo or little Kirito and not Alice if they accidentally violated the taboo index by stepping or touching the dark territory? What would happen between the trio? So what would happen to Eugeo is absolutely no different than what happened to Alice. And he will be reported back to the Central Cathedral, he would be taken away. With Kirito, it's not that simple, because he does not have an understanding of the taboos, and the way the taboo works is solely based on your understanding of it. Chances are Kirito would not even be reported to the Central Cathedral. They wouldn't know Kirito had broken a taboo because he simply isn't aware of the concept properly, you know, the same way the Underworldians approach the taboos. And that's the main difference. In fact, in the novels, it is hinted at that Kirito was about to feed a stray animal at some point, but never did. So he never broke a taboo technically in the main canon. But Licorice, despite being non-canon, obviously it's part of the gameverse, he does actually feed a stray dog. We know he feeds a stray dog, which is forbidden by the taboo index, yet nothing happens. So despite the game being non-canon, that is the kind of thing you can take as an information, you know? Because technically the underlying infrastructure is still the same, and they are using that underlying infrastructure. And there, Kirito has just violated a taboo, and nothing came out of it. So chances are, if little Kirito were to go into the Dark Territory, nothing would have happened, because those logic circuits that report things to the Central Cathedral, that understanding of taboos is completely different. So yeah, I hope that answers the question. It's still a little bit of speculation because we don't really have a specific explicit answer, but still I am 100% sure this is the case. Next one by Piotr Marshalek. It is kind of a spoilery question, but I am gonna answer it non-spoilery, so I'm putting it in the opinions section. Do you think they'll fully adapt Moonphase's part of the story? I remember there was someone in the trailer that might be him, but given the China situation right now, I'm not sure anymore. Well, first off, Moonphase is a Korean player, so I'm not sure why the China bit is relevant. I don't think the China bit is all that concerning regarding Moonphase. And I do think his portion will be, let's say, substantially adapted. I don't want to say fully, because he has a backstory that isn't really relevant. Somewhat of a backstory, it's not a full backstory. It's somewhat relevant. I don't see them adapting somewhat relevant content. They're just gonna do what is actually relevant, because, well, Moonphase is pretty much a side character. I don't think he'll get that much of a screen time for himself. I sure do hope that he does, but I don't see that happening. But again, a substantial adaptation of Moonphase's perspective of the story, yes, I do expect that to happen in future episodes. Next question by WolfZ Instinct. How is Shasta your favorite character of the arc? When you got this absolute legend to praise for, obviously referring to Bercouli, that is very easy. That's because Bercouli has been set up as this man with incredible ideals. Nothing really challenges him in regards to his mentality. He is this absolute chad of a hero that wants to do whatever is best. Whereas Shasta, in comparison, he has these ideals, but he has so much mental stuff to challenge to get to that point in his backstory, to learn those lessons, to obtain those ideals, and then use those ideals to go against the entire rules of the Dark Territory. That's what I love about Shasta, and that's why I wish he would survive a little bit longer to meet Bercouli at the very least. Next question, I believe this is the final opinion question. We're already over the 20-minute mark with the recording, so I don't want to have this taking too long. Here's an opinion question for you. If A1 wasn't doing the anime adaptation for Sword Art Online, which studio would you want to do it? My answer is, don't ask me these kinds of questions. I am not all that well versed with the entire anime scene, which studios there are, who's great, who does well done multiple core series, who only does single core series, etc. I can't answer. I am not the one to answer that question. If you ask me, sure, give it to Cloverworks. They did a fucking beast with Fate Grand Order. But that's what they did with the budget they had. So if you give it to Cloverworks without the budget, I don't even know what kind of a thing would come out. I am not the person to answer that question. Next question is where we enter spoilers. So if you don't want to be spoiled, do hit that subscribe button, do hit that bell icon, do hit that like, everything, click everything, become a channel member and stuff. I'm just speaking so you leave before we get to the spoiler section. 3, 2, 1. Okay, here we go. If you're still here, we're moving on with the spoilery bits. By Sing Yi, what scene are you looking forward to the most at the end of this arc? That's gonna be the nightmare sequence. That was so easy to answer. Definitely the nightmare sequence. Very much looking forward to it. Next one, we got a bunch of stuff, and this is gonna be a lightning round kind of questions. It's gonna be short answers. First one, will the second robot have a role in Alicization? You know, the which can't use stairs. Yes, it will be. That's why it was teased. If the Red Knights have low stats, how are they able to kill with those stats? They got the numbers. They very much have the numbers. If a Red Knight wants to leave Underworld, can he log out? No, they have to die to be logged out, or the acceleration rate has to go over 1-to-1, so Hemisphere doesn't support it and they get disconnected entirely. Gabriel has inner thoughts about his death in Underworld, or is exactly like the anime, whatever, use my account from Eugeo and move on. I'm not sure about this question. You mean like inner monologues, will they be adapted in the future? Things that have been skipped, I don't expect them to roll back to. If you're asking like, is he worried about losing Vecta account or something, and if we're gonna see any of that? No, he's not at all worried about losing Vecta account. He's perfectly fine with just relogging with his own GG account. Will Gabriel see the ghost again when he dies in Underworld as Subtilizer? We do not know. The question is obviously referring to Alicia's ghost that we have seen when Gabriel was first diving as Vecta. That was an anime original edition. That was a great anime original edition. I'm glad that exists. But I do not know if we'll see it again, because it was an anime original edition. And we'll have to wait for the anime to actually see if he's gonna encounter that again. But yeah, that's pretty much it from this week's weekly... weekly. I keep laughing every single time I say weekly. This is the end of our weekly Alicization War of Underworld Q&A. Again, starting next week, it is actually gonna become a weekly thing again. So sorry about skipping a couple episodes, you know, life happens. But thank you very much for watching. Again, subscribe and hit the bell icon for more. Make sure to like if you enjoyed this. We have Medina, Eugeo and Kirito merch available in my Teespring page. You know, patrons and channel members get a $5 discount code as well. Just check your respective feeds if you're supporting my channel on one of these platforms. And yeah, as always, thank you very much to those specific patrons and channel members, as usual. And I will see you in the next one. Until then, stay cool.